we should be live. Let's see. Cool. How's everybody doing today? Welcome to Tuesday. I'm just going to give people a couple minutes to join us. Shout out to everybody who's already here. Mixed Queen Destiny, Phillips 420, and Pebbles 83. We'll be talking some Maegor the Cool. Just kidding. So yeah, let's give everybody a few minutes. Just looking over my notes here. Have not actually left the screen though. I'm still here. Like left my monitor. I mean. All right. Alright. Let me make sure the audio's good. So I'm just doing like a talking, listening to myself. Can't hear anything. Okay, here. Alright, cool. Gonna be starting here in a couple minutes. Want to give everybody, a few more minutes to join us. Maegor the Cruel is the topic. I'll probably cover a few different things, but for the most part, Maegor will be the main choice of topic. Hope everybody's Tuesday is happening good. I was gonna actually start the stream. Maybe I will do it. Start the stream by making a song on this awesome app. I gotta go get my headphones first. Hang on. Alright. This should be fun. Do I want to use this song though? No, I don't. Let me pick a different one real quick. Let's see. This one sounds crazy. I don't know if I want to do that one. Hey everybody, I'm just going over beats. I'm gonna pick one. I'm gonna make a song live right now. Maybe it'll be about Maegor the Cruel. This one sounds alright. It's a little too techno. Yeah, I don't know. I don't like that one. Yeah, these. That was just loud. Okay, I can do this one. I'm gonna play it for y'all after I record it. So I'm gonna come up with the lyrics live. All right. Listening to my own voice sounds crazy. All right, let's do this. Y'all can't hear the beat right now, but you'll be able to hear it in a second. Maegor the Cruel, more like Maegor the Cool. Hey yo, check it. I killed a cat when I was 3 years old, listening to my story being told. My mom, she gave me steroids. I hopped up on the horse, then killed all the boys. Wait, that didn't rhyme. Let me go back and rewind time. This is corny. Check it. They call me Maegor the Cruel, but I'm the coolest cat in the kingdoms. And if you don't like it, you can leave. I was exiled for 5 years at the age of 15. That's not factually correct. All right, this is ridiculous. Let me just see what it sounds like, at least. Right? That was so corny. All right, here we go. This is stupid. No, I'm not even gonna play that. I didn't even do the audio right. I didn't up my vocals. But anyway, welcome to Sir Hunt's Reviews. In this video, this live stream, this podcast, we're gonna be discussing Maegor the Cruel. If you're unaware, Maegor the Cruel is the son of Aegon the Conqueror. So Aegon the Conqueror was the first Targaryen to unite, right? 6 kingdoms, ultimately 7. Dorne was brought into the fold much, much later. But Aegon the Conqueror, right, as he's known to history, had 2 sons. They're known as the Sons of the Dragon. One of them is Aenys, and the other one is what I'm going to be talking about in this live stream, Maegor the Cruel, right? So, Aenys and Maegor are like most Targaryen brothers, right? So, whatever one brother is, the other brother is the complete opposite, right? So, for instance, we have Daemon and Viserys in House of the Dragon. Daemon is a warrior. He likes to go fight in tourneys. He rides a dragon, right? And then you have Viserys, never been much of a fighter, right? Never fought in tourneys. And the one dragon he rode, Balerion, just like a couple times around the city, and then Balerion died after that, right? So they're very different. Ultimately, King Viserys is the one who rules. You could say Prince Daemon is a consort for a while, but ultimately, that's like the kind of relationship or the differences that Maegor and Aenys have. So Aenys is the oldest, which means that he would wear the crown. He's going to be, descended. Obviously, they're both descended from Aegon, but ultimately he follows after his father. And it's interesting, when Aenys and Maegor were being brought up, Maegor was kind of just ignored, right? Like, Aenys would be the one that would go with Aegon the Conqueror to all of the meetings. He would be, he'd be seen by most of the kingdom. Right, so it's clear that Aenys is meant to follow his father, right? Even though Aenys is nothing like Aegon the Conqueror, right? What's kind of interesting, it's probably spurred the rumors along a little bit, but when Aegon married Visenya, that's what Targaryens normally do. It's what Valyrians normally do. But then he married Rhaenys, and that's something that even in Valyrian culture is not all that common. Usually the only people that would take 2 wives would be sorcerer princes, right? And maybe they didn't even ride dragons, which would be the reason why they would technically take 2 wives. Anyway, Maegor is, in my opinion, if he was just given hugs as a kid, he would have been everything that Aenys was and so much more, right? So getting back on track here, Aenys was not really like his father Aegon. He was more like his mother Rhaenys, right? So Aegon would spend, nights with both of his wives, but for every 9 nights that he would spend with Rhaenys, it would be 1 night that he'd spend with Visenya. So ultimately, Aenys being born first, Aegon's relationship with Rhaenys, the fact that he loses Rhaenys, right, makes him, in my opinion, like, Aenys reminds Aegon the Conqueror of his mother Rhaenys, so Aegon kind of just forgot about Maegor, right? So, like, he would, when he would travel around the kingdom on Balerion and, take part in meetings, and like I said, he would have Aenys go with him, Maegor and Visenya would oftentimes be at Dragonstone. Like, Maegor spent so much time at Dragonstone, he was actually known as the Prince of Dragonstone. That's where we get that title from, right? So Aenys, being a child, having no children himself, Maegor obviously was the next in line after him. So since he spent so much time at Dragonstone and not in King's Landing, it was just the next in line. That's where that title comes from, Prince of Dragonstone. But the fact that he spent so much time over there, away from his dad, kind of turned him into who he is. So Visenya, just talking a little bit about her from what we know about her, or what is told by other people who potentially knew her, she was cold. She didn't necessarily have the likeness to poetry and the arts and music and paintings and all that stuff. She was colder, right? Like, it's not necessarily fair to say that she was like a cold-hearted bitch. It's just that this is the image that history paints of her, right? History in real life is oftentimes written by the victor, and they'll try to paint stuff as black and white. Like, this is good, this is bad. So you have Rhaenys and Aegon. Rhaenys is the good one, Visenya is the bad one, right? But that's probably not true. Visenya was probably just probably jealous of her, brother and sister, and that they were actually in love, but also she had a greater sense of duty, ultimately. So history doesn't look at her as fondly as they do Rhaenys, and that's where she gets that demeanor from. But ultimately, she doesn't have Maegor until after Rhaenys is born, and even though Aegon spent multiple nights with her, consummating, coming inside, making cream pies, Maegor wasn't born, right, for a while. What is interesting, though, is that when Aenys, get it? Aenys was first born, right? He was sickly. He was, not robust until they put a dragon in there, Quicksilver. His dragon, Quicksilver. Once Quicksilver's put in the crib with him, Aenys grew up. He had a big glow up, right? He got strong and powerful. Maegor from day one was a big, strong, strapping lad, right? So remember, there's rumors that it's just not rumors. It's court knowledge, right? Visenya puts a sword in Maegor's hand at age 3, and then he goes and kills a cat, chops it up. Now, you could say that that's a sign of him being a psycho killer, right? But children are children, and they don't know. He's 3 years old. He doesn't fucking know any better. It's stupid to just be like, oh yeah, he's a psycho from an early age. You can't just be that blank with stuff. That's what George teaches us in his world. Nothing is first of all, every narrator you read, POV or maesters from history, it's unreliable as shit. Every account of any sort of event that happened, it's always got the in parentheses in front of it, or in quotations in front of it. This may have happened. What the small folk think, what the maesters think, what the Septon thinks, right? It's never, usually, when it comes to history, it's never the actual person and their quotes and all this stuff. So, it's possible that Maegor, maybe had the sword, and, there's always cats just in general present in the story. Maybe one of the cats hissed at him, and him being a child, not necessarily knowing better, he attacked the cat with the sword, cut it, and it died or something like that, and then that turned into Maegor butchered a cat. Maegor's a psycho killer from age 3, right? So one of the other cool things about Maegor is at age 16, he becomes a knight, right? So at that time, that's really young. And I'm not mistaken, at that time in the history of Westeros, shout out Aziz and Ashaya, history of Westeros, and Shaun, they're YouTubers. I've met them a couple times, they're my friends. During that time period in Westeros, it was kind of not that common of a thing for someone to be named a knight and have his spurs at age 16. So Maegor was pretty cool in that aspect. He was a little bit ahead of his time. Also, when he was 13, right, and he was doing tourneys and stuff, he would beat the shit out of people that were way older and way bigger than him. It made me think that because Visenya has this, I actually did make images for this. How would I do this? There we go. I'm an idiot. You guys have been looking at my face this whole time. Let me bring my face back up, though. Let's see. Right there. And then... Wait, no, that's not going to work. Got to put it above that. Come on, man. This shit fucking my whole flow up. Right, put it up there. Thank you. Okay, now, make this motherfucker smaller. There we go. All right, now you can see Sir Hunch and all of this in the chat and all of that. All right, cool. Damn, where was I? Maegor Cats 13. Oh yeah, it made me think that Visenya, wanted to make him even more of an appealing next in line by showing that his prowess was so much greater, even though he's younger than Rhaenys. It's actually greater than Aegon himself, right? So it made me think that maybe she potentially gave him supplements to beast him up, because Maegor as you can tell by this art depicted of him and any of the other art that's depicted of him, was like a pretty big dude. Aegon, most Targaryens are slender. Melee's the monstrous, had a second head. He's like super incestuous. He's big. Hugh Hammer, ultimately Valyrian dragon seed, obviously related to House Targaryen. He's big too, but Maegor is just, there's no reason for him to be as big as he is, right? And I was going to say the direct line, something that he was like shaped like his arms were like a damn blacksmith or something like that. But that's why you just see all of this art of him being so big. So it made me think like maybe he got Westerosi form of steroids, and this is how he was able to beat everybody up. Because at that time period, it wasn't that common for 16-year-olds to be made knights. You know what I mean? To be fair, also at that time, Aegon the Conqueror was still alive. So a lot of things hadn't been set yet. So, but yeah. Getting back on track here. Maegor ends up pissing a lot of people off. Ultimately, he's given Dark Sister by Aegon the Conqueror. And then after Aegon the Conqueror dies, Aenys is made king, and then, guess what? Aenys, so stupid, gives Blackfire to his brother, Maegor the Cruel. Then Maegor retires Dark Sister on his wall in Dragonstone, and just from that point forward, carries Blackfire. And what's interesting is that Maegor, although he was super badass at fighting, super badass at pissing everybody off and coming up with this reputation, he didn't ride a dragon yet, and he didn't try to even claim a dragon. Like, it was mentioned that he may have even been afraid of dragons, but ultimately he was just waiting till his dad, Aegon, died because he wanted Balerion. So that's what he does. He goes and claims Balerion. So, Aenys, knowing that Maegor is, like, a way better picture of a king than he is, still gives him Blackfire. And then he goes and gets Balerion, Aegon the Conqueror's dragon. So Maegor has all of these symbols of legitimacy working for him. Ultimately, what ends up happening is, obviously, Aenys has kids. And at that point, Aenys has a daughter, Rhaena. And it's said that Rhaena was even ahead of Maegor in the line of succession. Whereas it would go Aenys, and then his father-daughter, Rhaena, his father-daughter, pretty much. Aenys, his daughter, Rhaena would get the crown, and then Maegor after that. And then whatever children that Rhaena would have, obviously they would be in front of Maegor as well, right? So Maegor is unable to get an heir himself. So what he ends up doing is marries two women. His mother, Visenya, right? Aegon the Conqueror's wife, warrior wife, the warrior version, Visenya, presides over this marriage. And I can't remember the exact name of who this bitch is, but I got her all right here. Hold up. Not right there. Not right there. Where is it? Right. There we go. All right, so sorry, guys. I'm going to have to move the chat box over here again. I'm sorry about that. Also, shout out to Alina Stripe. This is one of the best depictions of Maegor I've ever seen in my whole ass life, and I'm not even that old. Let me put myself right here. Here we go. All right, cool, perfect. Look at Sir Hunts, man. He's so cool with this fucking technology and shit. He makes technology his bitch. Okay, so what? Brides of Maegor. You know what? I've had a long ass week, and I'm sure you all watching this are having a long ass week as well. I'm about to go make a tequila in kombucha. I'll be right back. Why not, right? So yeah, just talk amongst yourselves. I'll be right back. God dang. I didn't want to leave y'all hanging too long because I already did this. And when I watch YouTubers and they do that waiting thing, kind of makes me feel like the amount of people who are watching aren't good enough or something. And I just want to let y'all know that's not the case. Just had to go get some tequila. No, this is not official sponsor of Surround's podcast. I don't even drink, but for some reason I have this weird nervousness about this live stream. I don't even know why. So I remember when I live streamed on my birthday, I had a drink, and that was one of the most fun live streams I'd had in a while. I think it's the idea of the alcohol just sitting in my hand kind of calms me down, Definitely used to be an alcoholic. Sir Hunts would get wasted. If you ever see me at any of the conventions, that's how it is. All right, so Cerise Hightower was unsuccessful in giving Maegor babies. So what he ends up doing is marrying Alice Haraway. Woo! Kombucha and tequila is fucking gnarly, dude. Holy shit, what was I thinking? Damn! This is insane. This is terrible. I should have got some damn regular orange juice. All right. Visenya presides over the marriage, right? And as a direct result of this, okay, Annie says, get the fuck out. 5 years. Get out, right? Maegor says, fine, I'm leaving. Maegor takes Balerion and goes over to Essos. He takes Blackfire too. It's funny because Anus is like, please, brother, please give me back. I'm doing Anus from Dukes of Hazzard. But I watched the Johnny Knoxville version with Jessica Simpson in her nice ass and massive tits. That's the version I watched. But obviously the version from the 70s is the one that everybody knows. Cletus, oh yeah! No, but anyway, Annie's was like, hey, Maegor, please, brother, leave Blackfire before you go. Just leave it. And Maegor famously responds by saying, hey, yo, my nigga, if you want this shit, come take it from me. Nah, he literally says, you're welcome to come and try and take Blackfire. So literally, right, Annie's, even though he has a dragon, even though he's the rightful ruler of the Seven Kingdoms, and if he really wanted to, he could call the biggest army ever, right, to go and get back Blackfire. He's like, nah, fuck it, it's not worth it, right? That's how big of a bitch Annie's is, right? That's why George called him Anus, in my opinion. But in all actuality, he's not that bad of a king. He's just not that interesting of a king. For instance, he literally dies from natural causes. He has pains and cramps in his belly towards the end of his life, and then he just dies, not from a burst belly, like Damon's dad, Balon, right? Didn't Balon die from a burst belly, right? Anyway, Annie's just died. Maegor's waging war with his children, right? And Aegon the Uncrowned and his wife, Rhaella, are held up somewhere. And Aenys finds out the news about this and then just dies, right? He dies from a broken heart. Like, if you even want to go that far, Princess Amidala, right? She finds out that... I'm not going to make Star Wars references. I'm not ready for that. But yeah, y'all know what I'm talking about. She finds out that Anakin killed all of the children at the Jedi Temple. And she just sort of dies of a broken heart. I think that's a real thing. Because there's been couples, like elderly couples, right? That have died within a few days of each other. And there's no reason for it aside from they just gave up the will to live, right? But yeah, so anyway, Maegor decides, right, that he's going to be the king in Westeros. And he faces up against Aegon, right? Aegon the Uncrowned, who's the eldest son of Aenys. Jaehaerys is another son of his. Jaehaerys, the old king, rules for 55 years, just hadn't been crowned yet. He's too young at this time. So Maegor, faces off against Quicksilver in what's known as the battle below the God's Eye. The battle above the God's Eye is where Daemon and Aemon One Eye face off, but the battle below the God's Eye, which means that it's beneath, the gods are watching over it, so they're going to make sure justice is served, right? Eventually to Maegor, right? Maegor was not the rightful heir. His cause was unjust, and he kinslayed, right? then you have Daemon and Aemon. It's a kinslaying there as well, but Daemon's cause was justified, and technically, super technically, Aemon's cause was justified as well, right? Aemon at the time is the king. He just doesn't take the title of king, and he doesn't actually wear Aegon the Conqueror's crown, right? So anyway, getting back on track here. What happens is Maegor is still what in the fuck am I talking about? Let me backtrack here. Aenys doesn't die because Maegor's raging war with Aegon and Rhaena. Aegon and Rhaena are having war waged against them because they're incestuous as shit. The Faith Militant and the religion in Westeros is not okay with brother and sister, mother and daughter, even though it's specifically mentioned Targaryens never did father and daughter and mother and son. They never did that. That was too far for them. Instead, they just did siblings and then like aunts and uncles, cousins, and shit like that. But anyway, Aenys didn't have a sister to marry, so the Sons of the Dragon didn't have to worry about this problem that the Faith Militant don't like incestuous relationships. And they couldn't really say shit to Aegon because Aegon is the conqueror, right? He had 2 sister wives. So they sort of just batted an eye at what Aegon the Conqueror did. But then you have Aenys, who married a regular-ass Velaryon, right? And their children, they have sons and daughters. So you know what that means with the Velaryon, with the Targaryens and the Valyrians of old, you know. They probably had tiny penises, I would guess. They ride dragons. You can't ride dragons, have the coolest looking hair, purple eyes, and then have massive cocks. Like, that's not, no. They probably had tiny Greek sculpture penises. Like, Greek sculptures will be like the statue of David, dude's ripped, right? But he's got this tiny little pecker. It's because the ancient Greeks and just people of old around that era thought that massive penises were vulgar and a sign of savageness. So the Targaryens probably did have tiny penises because they were very, all right, whatever. That's the tequila talking. The 2 sips I've taken. So yeah, anyway, backtracking. Aenys dies because his children are being, like, have war waged upon them by the Faith Militant. So when he dies and his ashes are interned at Dragonstone, Visenya says nothing, takes the crown, rides over to Essos on her dragon Vhagar. Sound familiar? Vhagar just killed Lucerys. Vhagar gets Maegor and Balerion, and Cerys Hightower is the one that went with him, right? Yes. So she goes over there, right? Gets them to come back. Cerys doesn't come yet. Maegor never figures out how to make her come. But I could do it. Just give me 20 seconds. I could probably... Most vaginas are pretty similar. It's a motion that you do with the hand and the thumb. It's possible, right? But anyway, being serious. She doesn't come yet. So Maegor comes back with his mom, Visenya, on their dragons. He is crowned. Ultimately, the 7 kingdoms who were in King's Landing at the time sort of bend the knee to him. There's one holdup. Faith Militant is not okay with Maegor. So what Maegor says is, okay, come fight me, bitch. So the Faith Militant sends out 7 of their champions. Maegor has, at first, nobody. But then this dude, Dick Bean, joins him, and then a bunch of other people. Because the knights see Dick Bean, and they're like, holy shit, we can't be showed up by this dude. Shaun Bean, Ned, Dick. I think Dick Bean is a reference to Ned Stark, played by Shaun Bean, the actor. Because Dick Bean is the first one that dies, right? In the trial by 7. So anyway, Maegor's king. Aegon is supposed to be king. Aegon is Aenys' son, but he sort of was unable to do that, right? So didn't have enough time. Maegor's crowned, and then he immediately challenges the Faith Militant to come and fight him, and since they want to say that he's the unlawful king, come show your prowess in battle, right? So Maegor, 6 other dudes, Faith Militant, 7 dudes, 7 other champions, so it's a 7 versus 7. They fight. Maegor ultimately wins, but after this, he's grievously wounded in a coma. So, right, His mother, Visenya, sends across the Narrow Sea to his wife, Cerise Hightower, and she comes back with Tiana of the Tower. Tiana of the Tower, right, is basically given charge of all of Maegor's care once she arrives in Westeros. So she uses leeches, she does black magic rituals, but ultimately Maegor wakes up and recovers, makes a full recovery, thanks to Tiana of the Tower. Now, around this time, during this time, another one of the problems, Maegor's second problem as king, right, arises, and that's Aegon, son of Aenys, is like, with his father's dragon Quicksilver, right, and their dragon, or his sister Rhaena and her dragon Silverwing. That's besides the point. Basically, they end up having a massive showdown. The battle below the God's Eye that I was talking about. Aegon and Quicksilver are no match for Balerion and Maegor. They ultimately destroy them. Wasn't much of a fight. Maegor is then not necessarily uncontested, but for the most part, problem-free until more problems arise, right? So ultimately, during this time, he needs an heir. None of his wives are giving him heirs. Even Tiana of the Tower, Eleanor Costain, Rhaenor, Jane Westerling, Cerise, Alice, none of these women can give him babies. And then when he does have children, they're born as stillborn. Like, they have terrible birth defects. And it's probably because whatever magic was used to make Maegor bigger and stronger and more appealing aesthetically as a king, that was given to him younger, that messed him up and made him infertile. And then also, you could either that's what made him infertile, or you could say that the magic and the rituals that Tiana of the Tower did to heal him, she sacrificed his ability to procreate then in order to heal him, right? So you kind of have to give up something if you want something in the form of magic. So maybe he unknowingly gave up his ability to procreate in order to still live, right? That's not completely unheard of in the confines of A Song of Ice and Fire. There's very similar things that happen like that all the time, right? So Jaime potentially killed the Mad King, had this terrible nickname that he hated, right? Kingslayer. But then ultimately he loses that same hand and is on this massive redemption arc. So it's kind of like, similar to that. And then also, I don't want to ruin this, but, well, it's not really ruining it. The video's been out for several days. Go watch it. I'll link it down below in here in the description after this live stream is over. But I talked about several different theories. I think it was like 5 of them that I came up with. I'm sure other people have came up with before, but they're just like the most plausible, like, it's a theory kind of sense, but not like tenfold, right? So, for instance, just to sort of explain the Cersei theory, it's mentioned that when Cersei was born, Jaime came into the world holding her foot. It's probably the same hand that he lost, right? So you would then think, okay, well, Cersei has to lose her foot, but how is that going to happen? When is it going to happen? Why is it even important to the story? Well, Cersei needs to have a redemption arc too before she ultimately dies. And one of the ways to having her start to, do a 180 or, a turnaround is by losing a part of herself. Something like her foot would hobble her, make her use a cane, and it would humble the shit out of her. Ultimately, before she died some gruesome death. Kind of like what's happening to Jaime, right? Jaime's this cocksure, right? We'll call it that. Cocksure dude ultimately loses his hand, and then he becomes like, his whole arc in Feast for Crows is like trying to right all the wrongs that House Lannister have done. So that's kind of what needs to happen to Cersei. So the foot thing, she ended up stepping on, like, during her walk of atonement, the walk of shame, right? Shame. Remember on the TV show? She cuts her foot, and then after she cuts her foot, she falls to the ground, right? And gets her foot cut. And then right after that, that same foot steps into what she assumes is night soil, which night soil, in short, is Westerosi shit. So Cersei is going to get septic in the foot. The foot will have to be cut off. And then Jaime will have no hand. Cersei will have no foot. And that's the link that the two of them sort of have to each other. Ultimately, after she loses her foot, that link will ultimately be severed, right? And then maybe Jaime will be able to redeem himself fully and, like, whatever is going to happen between him and Lady Stoneheart doesn't necessarily kill his character, but ultimately the ties that he has with Cersei are cut when Cersei loses her foot, and then she starts to have a redemption arc of her own and starts to sort of come back. So, what in the hell does this have to do with Maegor? I'm going to have to take a sip of this. I don't even know. So, getting back on track to Maegor. Maegor kills Aegon the Uncrowned. Now, I've seen this before, and I myself was curious about this when I first read Fire and Blood. Aegon II shouldn't technically, in House of the Dragon, be Aegon II. Shouldn't he be Aegon the Third? And then Aegon the Third should be Aegon the Fourth. No, you only get the number of, for instance, King John the First or King John the Second, right? You only get that if you're actually crowned. And since Aegon, whose nickname is the Uncrowned, never was crowned and made king in Westeros, he's just Aegon the Uncrowned. And it's the same with Viserys. Like, Viserys the First is technically the king when House of the Dragon starts, but there's a Viserys before him. Jaehaerys' younger brother Viserys, who's killed and tortured by Maegor. So, technically, he would be Viserys the Second, and then Viserys that we see on the Game of Thrones TV show would be like Viserys the Fifth or some shit. But none of them have those the second, third, or fourth, or the first title until they're crowned officially, right? So Daenerys would be Queen Daenerys. That's a tricky one. Have there been other Queen Daenerys? There's been a Daenerys Velaryon potentially, but as the sole ruling monarch, not a queen consort or queen husband of the king. No. Like, she'll be Aegon the Conqueror come again in female version. So would she be Daenerys the First? Daenerys the Conqueror? Like, what would be her moniker? I don't know, and I don't have time to figure it out. But yeah, it's an interesting train of thought. So after Aegon is killed, the big thing becomes heir. I need an heir. How am I going to secure my line of succession? And he unsuccessfully does this. Let me switch the picture up so y'all can look at something different. Damn, where am I put this chat at? There we go. I'll put it up there. Cool. I don't know if y'all can read that, but I'll resize it here in a couple of minutes. Ultimately, what happens with Maegor is because of the atrocities that he commits in the eyes of not just the Westerosi citizens, but also the gods, which may potentially be one or two deities that are ever warring with each other. And one of the ways they increase their power is by coming up with different religions. So, for instance, we could potentially find out that R'hllor is the same as the many-faced god of death, because the other version of R'hllor, the Lord of Light, there's a Lord of Shadow version of that. So everything that the Lord of Light, R'hllor, does in the light, there's this other dude juxtaposed doing everything in the shadow. So that could be the many-faced god of death, and then like the one true god, kind of, right? But that's what ultimately brings about his end. So, the end of the War Council, Maegor remained behind, alone in the Iron Throne. So he has a, let me explain this. The War Council, right? Ultimately, what ends up happening is Tiana of the Tower confides in him, or tells him that, ultimately, one of the wives that he has would sleep with other dudes when he was spending time with his other wives. Never has any kids. And then Tiana of the Tower, she's like the last one. She tells him, look, well, Rhaena is technically the last one, but she sneaks away. And then also one of them joins the faith as a silent sister or a septa. Doesn't matter. Ultimately, he is, like, when it comes towards the end of his reign, he has very few friends, right? Because one of the last things he does is campaign across Westeros, trying to quell the faith militant rebellions, and anybody who doesn't agree with him being king, right? He does a campaign across Westeros and kills people. Then he comes back to King's Landing and has all these heads. And he said, these are the heads of my enemies. In all actuality, it was probably the heads of people that had nothing to do with the war. Maegor just killed them, right? One of the things that he does when he's when he's the hand of the king for his brother Aenys, he's tasked with going to, I believe it's Harrenhal, and he puts all of the people to the garrison. Like, it doesn't matter if they were higher born and they could be sent away for hostages. He's still, like, because they were under the faith militant and loyal to, at the time, the faith militant in Old Town at the Citadel, well, not at the Citadel, in Old Town, he just doesn't show mercy, right? So when he comes back from that campaign, he hears the rumors that Jaehaerys and Alysanne and Rhaena are ultimately planning to usurp him. Rhaena is still in King's Landing at the time, so he just finds out that Jaehaerys is amassing all of these forces at Storm's End. He has a war council, and then ultimately, the end of the war council, Maegor remained behind, alone on the Iron Throne, sort of just sitting there thinking, and then the next day he's found dead by Queen Eleanor. Now here's the thing, the person he's found dead by probably killed him. Or Maegor, I hope we get like letters that Maegor wrote to Visenya or something, at some point discovered in A Song of Ice and Fire that will give us more insight to his character. But he seems like he's a tragic enough individual since he knew that the war effort was lost. It was pointless to try to, fight this war with Jaehaerys. He decides to kill himself. The atrocities that he committed, the fact that all of his wives were killed, the women that he thought he loved betrayed him, Tiana the Tower, right? He lost his mom, Visenya. It's mentioned, I should say this, that even though Maegor the Cruel ruled the Seven Kingdoms and ruled with an iron fist and did this and did that, ultimately he was ruled by the three queens. Tiana the Tower, his mother, right, Visenya, and then his one true love. I believe it was Cerise. Let me go back to that. It was the first one. I probably should have did more research on the part about his wives. But I like to do more of conversation, and in doing that, sometimes the facts are lost, right? But ultimately, Eleanor is the one who discovers him. As you can see in this image by Michael Womack, he has pieces of the Iron Throne piercing through him, so it could be that he twisted swords of the Iron Throne into a certain position and then just sat back on them and then killed himself that way. Maybe he was asleep, and when Eleanor came in the morning, she just pushed him down onto the blades. Like maybe she sat in his lap and gave him a kiss, and as she did that, she sort of had him. Maybe the other two guards that discovered him were a part of it, and they sort of held him down so that when he woke up and found out that she was pushing him down or caressing him or whatever, he just dies then. I don't know. It's kind of, you're meant to theorize about what actually happens to him. His robes covered in blood and his wrists were slashed. A spike from one of the swords on the throne behind him was impaled through the back of his neck. So, one of the most tragic, well, not necessarily tragic, but, it's a terrible ending for any character. It doesn't matter if you really like them or not. So what is this? What did I want to do? So let's talk in particular. Maegor, one of Maegor's more profound wives, right? Rhaena, she survives him. So ultimately, in 47 AC, King Maegor was dealing with the issue of the lack of his heirs, right? Kind of just talked about that, despite having already married 3 women. Lord Daemon Velaryon, Rhaena's uncle and member of Maegor's small council, advised Maegor to wed Rhaena to unite their claims and prevent new rebellions, and to gain her as hostage against any potential schemes of Dowager Queen Alyssa. Later that year, Maegor summoned Rhaena to King's Landing, and she did not defy him, to not return the Farman's kindness with destruction. Like, basically, she knew that if she didn't go to King's Landing, Maegor would come and destroy where she was residing at, right? The Farmans. At the Red Keep, Maegor married Rhaella in a triple ceremony, together with Eleanor Costain, Jane Westerling, and all of them became known as the Black Brides. Immediately following the wedding, Maegor declared Rhaena's eldest daughter, Arya Targaryen, the one who escapes on Balerion's back for a year and then comes back with all the fireworms, or orms. Orms is what they're called, right? I think I just seen it the other day on Twitter. I retweeted it. It's these little, tiny little creatures with faces on them, and they can go something like 10 years without eating or some shit. I don't know. They look like axolotls. Where is it? I gotta find that. This is crazy. But these are like fireworms. These are the things that are crawling out of, wait, where is it? No, I just tweeted it not that long ago. Oh, come on. Oh, yeah, right here. Olms. That's what they're called. Look at this. It's like this long, nasty looking thing. Can y'all see that? Yeah, y'all can see that. That's what was crawling out of Arya, right? So Arya is named Maegor's heir during this time. Let's do this. I have some questions from my Patreon, and I'm going to answer those right now. Make the chat a little bit bigger. There we go. Also, please go subscribe to my second channel. It's linked right there at the pinned comment at the top of this. Eventually, it's where most live streams are going to be. All right, so let's see. Whoa, what the hell? All right. All right, so I only have 2 questions this week. I think a third one was submitted here, but I'll need to go pull up Patreon for that. So the first one is from AnaaaRodarte. Thank you for your support, Anna. She says, "Do you think he was made by sorcery? Because Visenya couldn't get pregnant for the longest." So referring to Maegor, do I think Maegor was created by sorcery? Okay, so it depends on what you want to define as sorcery, right? So the rituals and the things that Visenya may have done to make herself more fertile would be considered sorcery to Westerosians, right? And the main reason being is because Aegon the Conqueror conquered Westeros during a time period when House Targaryen survived the downfall of Valyria. So the 300 years from Aegon the Conqueror to the main storyline, there's so much lost knowledge and lost history. But literally, when Daenerys the Dreamer went over to Dragonstone, right, and the Targaryens decided, hey, we're going to hold up here, they brought all of the knowledge they had from Valyria and at its height of power with them. So Visenya was just someone who, like I mentioned at the beginning of this, she's got a bad, like, I don't even know what to call it. I would guess a bad rap, right? History's given her a bad rap. And, like, they call her sorceress and this and that. And it's because she wasn't like Rhaenys. Rhaenys was, like, the realm's delight. She loved music. She loved art. She loved, like, entertaining dancers. And she would always be, pretty much pleasant with people. Whereas Visenya was not. She didn't enjoy those things. She was probably more, for the most part, anytime she was seen publicly interacting with Aegon or Rhaenys or just the court, it was probably cold because she was ultimately jealous, like I mentioned, of Aegon and Rhaenys. So, in short, do I think Visenya used sorcery to have Maegor? No. I think she did something that was not understood by Westeros and the Maesters and the men of that time, right? And because of that, she got labeled. But she probably just made herself more fertile. ultimately, the Valyrians had been incestuous for many, many centuries. Targaryens included in that. So it's probably just harder for them to conceive. And also, this, everybody watching knows this. Every time you have sex doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be a baby. You know what I mean? Like unprotected sex coming inside doesn't necessarily mean it's going to result in a kid every single time, right? But thank you for submitting that. And then the next question, AnaaaRodarte, thank you for submitting that. And then the next one comes from Pebbles83. And she says, dang, I should have saved my questions from a few weeks ago about the Black Brides for this week. Yes, and I remember those you submitted. That was a couple live streams back. You said, thank you for your support, by the way. You said, question number 1. Fire and Blood kind of makes it seem like Maegor had a decent relationship with his mother, Visenya, since they lived together in Dragonstone. But how do you think his relationship was with his father? I'm sure Aegon received reports of his son butchering cats and slashing faces by 8-year-old. Okay, so the slashing face of the 8-year-old, right? So Maegor stabs a horse, and a stable boy runs up because the horse is screaming, and Maegor is annoyed, so he slashes the little boy's face. That actually happened. He didn't kill the little boy, but he slashed his face off. The thing with the cat, that was probably a misunderstanding. I'm not saying he didn't chop the cat up, but I'm saying the cat probably pissed him off. He's a child. He has a sharp object. The dumbass adults shouldn't be giving him a child a fucking sword anyway, so they killed the cat. He didn't know what he's doing, right? I kind of feel like I just want to take the side that nobody else takes. Everybody always talks about how crazy and how cruel he is, so that's why I'm trying to defend him from that point. But your actual question was, how was the relationship between Aegon and Maegor? And I kind of actually already explained that. Maegor and Aegon, their relationship was non-existent. Aegon spent most of his time, when he wasn't ruling the Seven Kingdoms, most of his fatherly time with Aenys. Aenys was always seen with him at court and stuff, and he would travel with him the most. Maegor literally became known as the Prince of Dragonstone, not because he was next in line, but because he was just always at Dragonstone. So he was just known as Prince of Dragonstone. I think like I mentioned, the death of Rhaenys is what pushed Aegon into spending so much time with Aenys. Like, it's not the right thing to do, but you know how people always say firstborn, like my experience, my sister, right? Always appeared, like, at least when I was growing up, always appeared to be my dad's favorite. And there's a 3-year age difference between me and my sister. So, it's a sibling thing. Kind of makes you feel like you're not as wanted, right? It's why I try to work so hard to make sure my kids know that I love them equally, even though they're tiny, right? Anyway, this probably made whatever relationship that he had with Maegor non-existent. Like, you know how everybody always says Aenys, or society in Westeros says that Aenys potentially wasn't Aegon's son because Rhaenys would entertain singers and dancers and stuff, and Aenys is not really that like Aegon at all. What if Aegon thought the same thing about Maegor? What if Aegon saw Maegor's personality, heard that he's butchering cats, heard that he's cutting little boys' faces, heard that he's beating people up that are way bigger than him, he shouldn't be doing that. Maybe he thought Visenya cheated on him, and Maegor wasn't his son. Maybe that's why he decided to put all of his energy and effort into Aenys, but didn't want to cause a big civil war between him and his sister, and he just knew that if he spent all of his time with Aenys, Aenys is the one carrying on the dynasty, he's the next in line for the throne. I imagine their relationship was terrible. It was part of the reason why Maegor was so cruel, was literally, like, it's been proven that if kids don't get hugs and love and affection, they become terrible people when they grow up, when they get older. They don't, think the same way or act the same way as normal humans do that were in a loving environment when they were growing up. So that's probably what the relationship was like. In short, not the best. And then your other question, Pebbles83, was, do you think as part of the Maester conspiracy they encouraged Maegor to build the dragon pit, claiming it was a safe haven for him, but really over time the Maesters knew it would stunt their growth? I don't think so. I think ultimately Maegor just likes to build, right? So Maegor built the castle within a castle, finished the Red Keep, made it just as defensible and as strong. Obviously, like, Aenys started to do that. Aegon started to do that. But ultimately, he probably, like, wanted to keep his dragons close by, if I'm not mistaken. That's kind of the reasoning why he decided to construct the dragon pit, so that the dragons would have a place to reside inside the city. That sounds like something that a YouTuber, Tinfoil Theory, came up with. Like, because I know I go down these rabbit holes when I'm trying to come up with stuff that we don't have information and context for. I'll say something like that, but I'll have to recheck that with the idea stuck in my head, like, do the Maesters inspire the dragon pit to be constructed? I don't know. Ultimately, if the Maesters did want that to happen, and, thinking long term, oh, the dragons will get smaller and smaller over time, they're fucking idiots, because they killed thousands of people in King's Landing when the dragon pit is destroyed. The fact that the dragons are kept in the city when they break out, like we saw Rhaenys busted up the floor, like that's wasn't very well thought out of them, because they wanted to get rid of dragons, but instead they trapped dragons in one of the most populous areas of all time. So I don't think that is the case. But thank you for submitting that question, Pebbles83. And now I like that train of thought. I think there's probably some merit to it. I didn't look at it that way, or wasn't looking for Maesters conspiring when Maegor was around. I thought that after Maegor, and because of Jaehaerys, they decided, like, from that point, that's when they'll start meddling in the affairs. Ultimately, Maesters are linked with the Septons and the Faith in Old Town and all that stuff, so they probably realized, like, these Targaryens aren't necessarily the best for the kingdoms while they have their dragons. So it's possible. It's possible. Thank you for submitting that. Let's see. And then Mixed Queen Destiny Phillips 420 said, Anna pretty much asked my question, was Maegor born through blood magic? Was he a fire white? That's interesting. So that would mean Tiana of the Tower would be a priest of R'hllor to bring him back that way. I don't think so. That's fun. That's really fun, because she would, like, Melisandre wore red robes. Thoros of Myr had a red apparel, died over time and became pink, lost its color red. But ultimately, red priests of R'hllor, anybody that would be a fire white, through them, the person who does that will have to have some symbology of R'hllor himself. And Tiana of the Tower doesn't necessarily have that. She just has mysteriousness to her, but not, like, she's raven hair, really pale skin. Mysaria, really pale skin. I just don't think so. I don't think Maegor was a fire white, because he wouldn't have. You first of all, well, no, that proves it. You wouldn't have been able to kill him by, pushing his body down onto the Iron Throne. He would have still been alive after that. That's a really interesting thought. I've never heard that before. Let's see. Oh, what the hell? Oh, I'm stupid. Did I already do all of the slides? I think I did. Yes, I did. All right, so I'll go back to this one. All right, so let me do a shout out to everybody who's watching right now. Let's see how many people are watching. If you're watching but not typing in the chat, please type in the chat so I can give you a shout out. If you want one. If not, obviously you don't have to do that. So shout out to Brendan Bailey, Mixed Queen Destiny Phillips 420, John Haymaker, Dennis Sorensen, what's up, man? Peasy, Pete Easy, what's up, bro? I feel like you made this one just for me. Hell yeah. Oh, damn. Super chat. $1.99 from Cody Landry. Thank you, man. Longtime fan just giving back. Thank you, Cody. Appreciate that. I missed that. I'm sorry. Also, Barbie Tuck. Trying to see. Crystal Hargens 50. Mitchell McCormick. Divine Sharika. Kate Harley. Billy Bob, what's up, man? Rafael Luna, you finally made it. I ain't seen you in here in a minute, Rafael. I thought you forgot about my ass. Where you been at with these? Kolnitsky, what's up? And I think that is everybody. That's typing anyway. All right. All right, cool. So let's talk some more about Maegor. If any of my patrons have submitted questions during the live stream to the Q&A thing, please don't do that. It's silly. I know Danny Dino did it this time, and then you did it last week too. It's not funny. I give y'all 2 days notice, and then I'll answer anybody that submits, obviously up until the time of the live stream. But if you submit during the live stream, seems like you're trying to troll me, and I'll troll whoever that does that by not answering it. And I know that sounds crazy. Seems like I'm being a dick, but there's people that watch me that are fans of mine that think it's funny to see me get upset and like mad and stuff, and I don't really think that's funny. So, fuck you. I'm just kidding. I didn't mean to say that. That's how I think sometimes when people intentionally mess with me, because I don't do that to anybody else. Why the fuck are you doing it to me? But anyway, if you did that, I'm going to answer it towards the end of the live stream. But just, please, just submit. I give people several days notice. Also, I post all the time on Patreon. So if you have a question for anything, you can ask me, and I'll either copy and paste it myself to the post or any of it. There's no reason to try to mess with me and make me mad because you think it's funny. Destiny. Mixed Queen Destiny Philip. That's not funny. I don't think it's funny, at least, anyway. Because I hate getting mad. You know what I mean? Especially on camera. So it's not funny. If you think that's funny, you need to adjust your sense of humor and laugh at something else. But anyway. Julissa Rentis says, Sir Hunts, thank you so much for keeping me entertained. Love your videos. Thank you. Dennis says, sup, just chilling at the house, listening to you. Nice. Thank you, for watching me. Jeff Johnson said, can we bong rips with our lure? What do you mean? Let me do some research. Let's do that together. All right, everybody, grab your, stuff. I know I got mine right here. You know what I'm saying? It's Black History Month, you know what I'm saying? So yeah. I didn't mean to do that fast. What the hell? I'm still here though. Yeah. Sorry. Let me take a sip of this tequila and kombucha concoction. I thought it would be good. All right. Maegor, you son of a bitch. All right, here's the thing. Maegor the Cruel is another character. I could say misunderstood, but that would be wrong because there's definitely people that understand him, but your circumstances, how you were brought up, like what your political opinions are, will, kind of affect how you see Maegor. But I tried to. I know it doesn't seem like I'm prepared for this live stream, but I really did try to. Obviously, I know all of his backstory. I tried to look at it differently from a different perspective. It's easy to, and I've had this shit happen to me too. Like, it's easy to hear rumors about somebody and never having met that person. You just feel like you know them because you form an opinion on information you've heard about them. That's kind of like what it is with Maegor. So if they ever do a Maegor the Cruel show, like the Black Brides or something, like you talk about all the different times he got married, ultimately this would be like a mini-series, maybe one season, 10 episodes or something like that. Each episode is like an hour and a half or something, but it would bring some light because ultimately the things that he did that were cruel aren't enough to give him that moniker. Maybe Maegor the Unfair is a better position. Ultimately, when he has head trauma, when he's kicked in the horse, or when he's kicked by the horse, that could cause him to have a concussion, and it could have greatly changed his personality. Like, I know I talked about him on Patreon, but I never talked about it here. this scar on my head was a result of me receiving like 3 different concussions in one night, right? And like I didn't even realize that until talking about it during that episode of my podcast I did for Patreon. But literally, my personality ever since that, right? 3 concussions in one night. Like basically, I got kicked in the back of the head, right? So that was one, and then my head went into a rock, and then that was the second one, and then like I got hit in the side of the face to fall down initially. So I skipped over the first. So the first one, basically, like I'm standing there, someone runs up, hits me with the side of a BB gun. It wasn't a real gun. I'm not afraid to admit that. I got pistol whipped by the side of an airsoft gun, right? Then it fell to the ground, but that was like right here. So that was one hit to the side of my head, or one concussion kind of. And then the kick to the back of my head was 2, and then when my head into the rock, that was 3. And ever since then, my personality has been insanely different. Like, most of the friends that I was friends with during that time period, well, the ones that had something to do with that night, fuck them, right? I didn't talk to them anymore. But, like, everybody else kind of were like, yo, you're really neurotic and you're nervous and all this shit. And, like, that was like a slight part of my personality before. But after that moment, I had all this anxiety and stuff. I never trusted anybody. That made me a different person. So that's probably what happened to Maegor. So, like, you know, I didn't kill no cats with no sword. I have beat up people that are bigger than me, but ultimately he has this title of being this massive asshole. That's probably due to circumstances that are maybe out of his own hand, right? You don't know. I sound like I'm trying to like psychoanalyze Maegor, but yeah, that's kind of what I'm trying to do. But yeah, jump in the chat real quick. Sativa, bro. Sativa or indica. I think it's a hybrid. Probably sativa dominant, but I don't know. Maegor saved Westeros from the Faith Militant. He was the right kind of cruel for the time. That's the thing. What would the Faith Militant have done that he was saving Westeros from? Because it's actually frustrating, and it makes me enjoy books like Lord of the Rings potentially more because Tolkien doesn't leave as much for us to try to figure out for ourselves. It's not much of a moral dilemma complex. It's like Sauron, bad. Saruman, bad. These guys, good. Sometimes they waver, but ultimately they stick to the same path, and you can decide something definitively, right, with his stuff. And I think I have like 3 hours left in the audiobook for Return of the King, so I've pretty much finished the entire series, but once, so really doesn't count for shit. I need to read it at least 3 more times. Double check where I'm at in Return of the King. Yeah, I got 4 hours left. The damn songs, that's my one complaint. Those songs in the audiobook, I'd read through them in like 30 seconds in the actual book. But in the audiobook, those songs will last a minute and a half. And it's like, Rob Inglis doesn't have the greatest singing voice. That's my one complaint, all right? It's the songs are cute, and I like how they drop lore and stuff, but the dude singing them, too much. Not as bad as Andy Serkis, though. Holy crap. Oh, man. It's like 40 different versions of the same Smeagol Gollum voice. But anyway, so yeah, you know, it's kind of, it's what makes the world more, I guess, feel more real, because nothing is just, oh, well, this person was bad, this person was this or that. And like George makes it really clear from the jump, from World of Ice and Fire, even though this king was called Maegor the Cruel, he wasn't always that way, and there are some things that potentially made him turn into who he is. Being kicked by the horse didn't help. Being savagely beaten and having another blow to your head, right? Fighting the Faith Militant, that doesn't help. Being forced into exile when you're supposed to be your brother's heir doesn't help. Never receiving the love of your father. Or Visenya, because Visenya wasn't that type of woman to do that. She didn't give him motherly love. She tried to probably be both parents and failed so much that she was neither. So Maegor is a product of his environment, yes, but he's also not the cruel. He's Maegor the cool, okay? That's fucking... I'm just drinking some regular kombucha minus the tequila. Jesus Christ. So yeah, this was probably one of the more shorter streams. I usually do like an hour and a half, but I didn't have that much time today to do full like 2-hour stream. Next week the stream time may switch to later on in the day. I'm not sure. I don't want to switch the day up because I've been doing Tuesdays for a while. And before that it was Saturdays. And I think now someone else is streaming on Saturdays. And I don't think anybody's streaming on Tuesday. And I don't want to stream at the time that anybody else is streaming. And then also, I go to school. I have a part-time job. And I have 2 children, right? So it's Tuesday. It'll probably be later in the afternoon. But thank you for watching. Thank you for hanging out with me. Hopefully you enjoyed my take on Maegor. I could do, and I'm going to do videos that are focusing on like more of like, for instance, I can do a video just on his relationship with each one of his black brides and when they started and that, or like when they sort of like, not necessarily met, but just like what impact that person may have had on Maegor kind of thing, right? And I've already started making a couple of those. Like I've recorded half of 2 of those videos. I just haven't put them out yet because my friends, Robert from Indie Geek, and then also Aziz from History of Westeros in general, the whole channel, Shaun and Shay, they're doing Maegor for like the past couple of months. So I waited until they put their content out, and now I can do my stuff. So I don't know if they have anything else planned for Maegor too. So that may be a problem. But just look for the Maegor videos. They're coming. I promise. If you join my Patreon, you'll get a Maegor podcast before then. Much more focused, in depth than this. I'll read from the book and all that stuff. I could probably read from the book on YouTube. I just have literally one of the only strikes that I got on my channel that I couldn't do nothing about was from Penguin Random House Publishing, whatever the fuck the company is, and it was because I did like a 7-minute read, which I've actually done since then, and I've only read a part of it, and I didn't get in trouble. So let's do that. All right, so I'll do 10 more minutes, and I'll do like direct book quotes. Shit. The Targaryen Kings. This is from World, though, not from Fire and Blood. Fire and Blood's very Windor. Windor? What the hell does that even mean? Fire and Blood is very windy. Wordy is what I meant to say. Okay. Maegor the One. Maegor the First of his name came to the throne after the sudden death of his brother King Aenys in the year 42 AC. He is better remembered as Maegor the Cruel, and it was a well-earned sobriquet, for no crueler king ever sat the Iron Throne. George, why are you so one-sided in World? His reign began with blood and ended in blood as well. The histories tell us he enjoyed war and battle, but it is clear that it was violence he most craved. Violence and death and absolute mastery over all he deemed his. Except for his mom was like his number one advisor. I'd like to know what George does to prep himself to seem so fucking biased and in the shoes of some person who potentially really actually is a maester in Westeros if it was real. Because that takes some fucking skill. He just dismantled everything I just said about Maegor not being cruel enough. His reign began with blood and ended in blood. The histories tell us he enjoyed war and battle, but it is clear that it was violence was what he most craved. But anyway, even today, some give thanks that his tyranny was a short one, for who knows how many noble houses might have vanished forever simply to sate his desire. Okay, so that is nonsense. He burned people who were loyal to the faith militant, which, if you want to be technical, he learned how to do from Aegon the Conqueror. Aegon the Conqueror burned Dorne for 10 fucking years, for a long time. They would just show up and just burn shit. They would burn every single castle in Dorne, except for, I think they would leave Sunspear because they had something going on with the Martells, right? They would literally, like, the Dornish people would rebuild, and then bam, there's Aegon and Visenya. They're like, oh shit, not again. This is the third time in one day. So what are you talking about? Saying stuff like his tyranny was a short one. For who knows how many noble houses might have vanished. Who knows how many noble houses might have vanished if Aegon kept warring on Dorne? Everybody's like that. All the Targaryens are like that. Just depends on which point in their life or which aspect of their personality you want to show and shine a light on in the passages that you write. It's frustrating. What's more frustrating is when I read comments on Reddit, specifically on House of the Dragon subreddit, and the fucking moderators are assholes. Fuck those moderators on Reddit/House of the Dragon. It's a long story, but basically, for some reason, whatever. Anyway, you read comments like that where somebody will say, oh no, everybody's going to hate Rhaenyra after season 2 because of blood and cheese, and like, everybody's going to be Team Greens and Team Blacks. No, that's not going to be the case. They're going to make it, they're going to continue to make House of the Dragon consistent with the book material, as it is an adaptation of Fire and Blood, and it's telling the story of the Dance of the Dragons. But if you think somebody's going to flip to the other person's side after one episode and then stay on that, it's stupid. No, you're going to flip back and forth multiple times in the same episode because no one is ever all the way right. Right? So, like, for instance, me and my girlfriend argue about stuff all the time. All the time. And, like, I want to get my side apart, and I want to get my side told and my part heard, and same with her. Ultimately, we're usually both right, just versions of what we're saying. You know what I mean? You got to extract, and it's really hard to do, especially with 2 children. So it's frustrating when I see people trying to be so black and... Well, I just complained about how George's world is not black and white, and how that's annoying. Man, I'm all over the place. I need to, yeah. But let's do this. Let's keep reading, right? Visenya then challenged any who denied Maegor's right. Wait. I skipped over something. He most craved violence and death and absolute mastery over all he deemed his. What demon possessed him, none could say. Even today, some give thanks that his tyranny was a short one, for who knows how many noble houses have vanished forever, simply to sate his desire. All right, so in the text, there's like a, not in quotations, but like it's the part that was written by Elio and Linda. They are, I think George has said this before. He's responsible for everything that is on the regular page, but the bracketed stuff, so this right here, that was written by Elio and Linda. So Elio and Linda actually wrote some of the most juicy tidbits for World of Ice and Fire. Like George would say something, and then, when the voice switches up from, I don't know who does the narration. I know Roy Dotrice does some of the narration, but when it switches up to the other guy, not Simon Vance, but it's just someone they had do World of Ice and Fire, they wrote all of the parts that he reads, right? If I'm not mistaken. So that's some of the more interesting stuff. Anyway, it was said that Aenys was an adequate sword and lance, capable enough not to disgrace himself, but little more. Maegor, on the other hand, was defeating hardened knights in the melee when he was all of 3 and 10, which is 13, and quickly won renown in the royal tourney of 28 AC, where he defeated 3 knights of the Kingsguard in succession in the list and went on to win the entirety of the melee. He was knighted by King Aegon the Conqueror at 6 and 10, the youngest knight in the realm at that time. That's amazing. But you got to ask yourself, was he completely unharmed? Did those people willingly want to allow him to win because he's clearly Aegon the Conqueror's son, and if they hurt him, maybe, right? Because obviously, you don't want to be the person who draws blood on the prince, right? But then you add all that other stuff, like he won the melee, he beat 3 knights of the Kingsguard, one after the other. It's like there's just too much. It's too much to not be like, okay, yeah, he was a renowned warrior. He was genuinely beating these people up. Obviously, there was probably some hesitation from Knights of the Kingsguard. But no sooner had Aenys been buried than Visenya mounted... Wait, hold up. Oh, yeah, okay, so getting back. So, no sooner... That's confusing. No sooner had Aenys been buried than Visenya mounted Maegor and flew east to Pentos to recall her son Maegor to the Seven Kingdoms following his exile. Maegor flew back across the Narrow Sea with Balerion, staying at Dragonstone for long enough to be crowned with his father's Valyrian steel crown instead of his brother's more ornate one. Grand Maester Gawain protested, noting that by the laws of inheritance, Prince Aegon, Aenys's oldest son, should be king. Maegor's response was to declare that the Maester was a traitor, sentence him to death, and take his head with a single swing of Blackfire. After that, few others dared to support King Aegon's claim. Or to support Aegon's claim, ravens flew declaring that a new king had been crowned. It's really interesting. He comes in, chops off a few heads, and no one's got any more questions anymore. All of the questions are ceasing to exist. Oh yeah. Let me skip ahead a bit. Okay, so here we go. The brides. Let's get back to this page. Let me go back to the page that I had the brides on. Oh shit, I made myself disappear. Whoops. Where are the brides? Okay, so the brides? The brides? The brides? The brides? Oh, right there. Right there. Alright, cool. Chat. I gotta move you over here. Oh, shit. 2 super chats. Thank you. One from Iced Up Jewelry. Thank you. Iced Up Jewelry, and he said, appreciate you keeping us updated on the show and lore and great content. Thank you. Thank you for that. And then another one from Julissa Rentas, and no message, just a high five. A lemon. And what's that? A lemon and... Is that an Oddish? A Pokemon? A lemon and a lime, I guess? Thank you for that super chat. So let's do the actual book version of talking about all of these women's. All right. So first we have Cerys Hightower. Now, if you're unaware, Cerys was the daughter of Martin Hightower, Lord of the Old Town. She was put forth by her uncle, and I'm not reading it verbatim. I pretty much am. I'm just replacing words so that it's not like a direct quote from the books because I've already kind of just did that. I don't know how YouTube's algorithm works when it comes to how much you can say or not. Or, I just know you have to add your own thoughts and interject your ideas in between reading it. So basically, she was put forth by her uncle, who was the High Septon at the time, and he declared and protested, made a big point that this betrothal, happened, because Prince Maegor's newborn niece, Princess Rhaella, was like the other option. So anyway, Cerys and Maegor were married in 25 AC. The prince claimed to have consummated their marriage a dozen times, which is funny, because literally, it's probably when he lost his virginity, right? And then he has sex, and he's like, I did it 13 times. I made many sons. I made a son for House Targaryen. And what ends up happening is that he was wrong. He didn't make a son. But guess what? Aenys did. Aenys made a son. Aegon, the Uncrowned. The one who Maegor fights and kills and rips the shreds on the back of Balerion. So I just thought that was really cool. Ultimately, Cerys ends up dying in 45 AC, taken by sudden illness. Though also it was rumored she was killed at the king's command. So this is, if I'm not mistaken, where basically her tongue was supposed to be removed and it slips and the king's guard accidentally cut her throat. Actually, no, that's the fate of one of the other ones. Okay, so Cerys of Hightower married Maegor in 25 AC. She ultimately dies in 45 AC from a sudden illness. Then next we have Alice Harroway. Alice Harroway was the daughter of Lucas Harroway, who was the Lord of Harrenhal. Basically, a secret marriage took place in 39 AC when Maegor was still the hand of his king, the hand of his brother, the King Aenys. And the wedding was done after the wedding happened. This is when Maegor gets exiled to Pentos in specific. She was the first woman to become pregnant. Wait. I'm skipping too far ahead. Alice became queen after Maegor brought her back from Pentos. She was the first woman to become pregnant by the king in the year 44 AC, but she lost the baby soon after. What was expelled from her womb was a monstrosity, eyeless and twisted, and in his fury, Maegor blamed and executed her midwives and the Grand Maester, Desmond. And then, obviously, Tiana of the Tower, being classic Tiana, says, "Oh no, it's not like how you think." Tiana of the Tower ends up saying, or convinces Maegor that that the child was not actually Maegor's. That Alice Haraway, and I kind of mentioned this before, when Maegor would go and spend time, like basically having sex with his other wives, Alice Haraway would entertain anybody who was proven fertile. So Tiana tells this to Maegor. May or may not have actually been the case, because she probably wanted to actually produce a child for Maegor, but Maegor was infertile because of, like I mentioned before, the magic that may have potentially saved his life could make him infertile. Ultimately, she dies in right there, 44 AC, right there. And then next, Tiana of the Tower. So Tiana of the Tower was the most feared of the Black Brides of all of King Maegor. Rumored to have been the natural daughter of a Pentoshi magister and a tavern dancer, she rose up to become a courtesan. She was said to practice sorcery and alchemy. So going back to Destiny Phillips 420's question, it would have said that she studied in the Temple of R'hllor, or she paid homage to the fire god, or just something like that. It wouldn't have just been generic, like it was said that she, practiced sorcery and alchemy. It would say, like, first of all, Pentos isn't exactly known for R'hllor, right? So Thoros of Myr is from Myr. Myr is not necessarily known. Most of Essos has different religions. I think R'hllor is one of the most prominent ones, but ultimately in Volantis is where R'hllor has the biggest temple, right? Volantis is this really old city. It was originally a daughter of Valyria, so one of Valyria's slave cities that they pretended to not rule and allowed them to rule themselves. But ultimately in Volantis, there's actual scions of people from Valyria, maybe not necessarily all of them road dragons, but they're descended from them. And inside Volantis, they have these black gates, or these massive walls of black stone that keep out anybody who's not of the blood. Like, doesn't matter if King Robert came to Volantis, he wouldn't be allowed to get into the city unless they could trace his ancestry back to Rhaella on his grandmother's side, because she's of the blood. But even then, it's like, do they allow Targaryens into that? Or, like, do you have to literally... Maybe they'd be allowed in as a guest. But anyway, Volantis is also known to having, like, the world's largest R'hllor temple, right? So if Tiana of the Tower could do blood magic, specifically, fire magic, and bring a fire white into this world, like Melisandre's going to do with Jon Snow, and like Thoros of Myr has done with Beric, and then Beric did to Lady Stoneheart, which is kind of interesting. It's crazy. Lady Stoneheart's a fire white too. She just didn't have a thing. It wasn't a part of the TV show. But anyway, I don't think Tiana of the Tower is from the Faith of R'hllor. But she was wed to the king in 42 AC, but their marriage bed was barren as the rest. Called the King's Raven by some, she was feared for her ability to ferret out secrets and served as the mistress of whisperers. Very similar to Mysaria. Very similar to, get this, Varys. Also, Lares, the foot. So, that's pretty cool. Ultimately, Maegor, she eventually confessed her responsibility for the abominations that were born of Maegor's seed, claiming she poisoned and caused all of his other brides to have miscarriages. Ultimately, she was killed by Maegor himself in 48 AC, as you can see right there. He basically cut her heart out with a black fire and then threw her heart to his, get this, dogs. There's not even a mention of Targaryen kings having royal dogs, really at all. But they had them when Maegor's day, and he fed the heart of Tiana to those dogs. That's probably the cruelest thing he's ever done. And you know what? She deserved it. She did. She knew what it was. It's like Mysaria in House of the Dragon. Mysaria. Who in the fuck do you think you are talking to Daemon, poisoning Daemon, making him get drunker than he should have been? Are you stupid? Like, that's one of the problems that I have with the show, is that Mysaria obviously doesn't do that in the books. She works with Daemon, but like, you got to understand the power levels. Like, some random whore from Lys can't do that to the prince and get away with it. Like, that's, you can't do. You can't talk to him that way. When he said, I'm going to get you pregnant and marry you, you should be excited. Mysaria was not necessarily like this, someone with a modern ideals. Like, she's like, I'm not going to get pregnant. I'll never do that again. Like, there's characters that have that sentiment, but ultimately that was added on for the show. And like, it kind of just made me mad a little bit, because you got to realize that, like, it's just, I don't know. It just broke the what I'm used to reading in the books a little bit, because that obviously didn't happen. But ultimately, like I said, you can't talk to the prince like that. Like, that's not okay. I don't know who wrote that dialogue, but you can't say that. Can't talk about Daemon like that. You know what I'm saying? All right. So let's see. We've got Eleanor of House Tockstein, right? So Eleanor of House Tockstein. Eleanor was the youngest of the Black Brides. Though she was 9 and 10 at her marriage, she had already given her husband, Sir Theo Bolling, 3 children. Sir Theo was arrested by the Knights of the King's Guard and accused of conspiring with Queen Alyssa, the Dowager Queen, to place her son Jaehaerys on the Iron Throne. Ultimately, after 7 days of mourning, Eleanor was summoned to wed Maegor. She became pregnant, and like Alice of House Harway before her, she gave birth to a stillborn abomination. So, check back to Tiana of the Tower. And then next we have Rhaena. Rhaena is his niece, right? She ultimately survives, becomes Queen of the West. She is directly responsible for Daenerys getting her dragons. Like, it was known. Okay, so let me give a back history. I don't need the book for this for Rhaena. Rhaena, as a child, would obviously she knew she was going to marry her brother Aegon, so she would take Aegon up on her dragon Quicksilver. But ultimately, she would take her best friends. She would take women. She was a lesbian. You find that out later in the story, right? So she, from a very young age, she knew she was a lesbian, right? So basically, when Aenys is king, she doesn't necessarily have the best life, but one of the better lives at the time. And ultimately, when Aenys dies, she has a really cool line. Here's a really cool line. So when Rhaena and Aegon are making their campaigns across Westeros, she shows up at this one location, and she doesn't have her dragon with her, so they throw dirt on her, and she says, I'll be back. And when I come back, I dare you to throw dirt on me again, because then I'm going to be on the back of a dragon. That's one of my favorite lines in all of A Song of Ice and Fire, and I can't even remember the exact words of it. But yeah, so basically, she ends up, remember I mentioned this before, when she's summoned by Maegor, so she's not immediately summoned by Maegor. She sort of flies around the Seven Kingdoms with her kids, and ultimately she leaves her kids. When she's summoned by Maegor, she goes to King's Landing. She doesn't want to fight, because she knows that where she's staying at, and Harlaw, they would be burned, right? Maegor Balerion wouldn't hold back if he was forced to come down there to get his niece. So ultimately, she ends up marrying Maegor, and like the night that he supposedly dies, she slips out. She may have been the one that killed him, but she ends up slipping out with her dragon, and she basically allows Jaehaerys ultimately the throne. She doesn't necessarily have a choice in the matter, but you got to realize that line of succession, Rhaena being the oldest of Aenys' kindred, his children, she would be next in line for the Iron Throne. But obviously, Jaehaerys and Alysanne are the one who, Jaehaerys is the one who's crowned, and he marries his sister Alysanne. Really, Rhaena should have been the one that he married, but that's not the case. So ultimately, what ends up happening is Rhaena kind of finds happiness for a while. She ends up staying with the Farmans at Fair Isle. She marries Andrew Farman, who is like this dude that she just ignores the shit out of. He gets her back, though. He poisons everybody that loves her and then jumps out of the window. He teaches her. He's like the biggest cuck in history, but he really does get her back. And it kind of makes you wonder, like, should she have been so fucking mean to him? But anyway, so basically, long story short, she has a relationship with Alyssa Farman. Alyssa Farman wants to leave, wants to build a ship and go travel the world. And Rhaena says, I'm not going to go with you. So Alyssa proceeds to build the ships. Ultimately, Rhaena stays. And she finds out that Alyssa Farman stole 3 dragon eggs, went to the Sea Lord of Braavos, used those 3 dragon eggs to build Sunchaser. And then she uses Sunchaser to go west of Westeros. Ultimately, she finds a new path to get to Essos. Because years later, when Corlys Velaryon is in Asshai, he sees the battered hull of Sunchaser at the dock of Asshai. So she's been traveling the world. That's a bit of a backstory for Rhaena. And then, shit, I shouldn't have closed the book because I don't know nothing about Jane Westerling. That bitch. Where were we at? Blackfire. Oh, Lord, Jesus, it's a fire. All right, come on, man. Where is it? I was just there. Okay, here we go. Jane Westerling. Tall and slender, Lady Jane had been wed to Lord Alan Tarbeck, who died with the rebels at the battle beneath the God's Eye. So that's the battle between Aegon and Aegon the Uncrowned and Maegor. Having given him a posthumous son, so after he died, her fecundity was proven, and she was being courted by the son of the Lord of Casterly Rock when the king sent for her. In 47 AC, she was with child, but 3 moons before the child was due, her labor began, and from her womb came another stillborn monster. She did not survive the child for long. So that's the last one. That's Jane Westerling. All right. So we hit the 1 hour, 35-minute mark. I want to thank you all so much for watching these. Remember, the next one, you'll know immediately, because as soon as I figure out my schedule, I make it public here on YouTube, and then, everybody has several days' notice to come and join me for the live streams. Next week topic, we're going to be continuing reading Fire and Blood, and then after that, I'm going to do a Euron these pretty much are podcasts. I try to format them like they are anyway. But, whoa. Holy that looked crazy for a second. It's like, does it flip me over when I do that? Oh, no, weird. I'm at a new dimension. All right. So, yeah. Thank you for hanging out with me. Like I said, I try to form these to be like a podcast. So, my videos, I'll have it written, not written, but I have like points that I want to make, and then I'll go back to those points, and then remind everybody at the end of the video. But these live streams, I try to look at them in the format of podcasts, so it's more like a conversation between me and you, the person listening. But then also, I get bored when I talk about one subject for too long, so I'll try to intermingle all the information that I want to get through in the form of a podcast, right? And I watch some pretty popular podcast. Obviously, I watch Joe Rogan. He's the most popular podcast in the world. So, when you see conversations like that, it makes me want to emulate that and have that same style of format. So that's what this is. If you want more, check the link down below in the description. Watch my YouTube House of the Dragon playlist. Also, please, if you want to take it that far, consider checking out my Patreon. You can join for $2. And just yesterday I released a 40-minute episode. I'm trying to do the podcast that I released there longer. What I was doing before is every day or every other day I'd release a 15-minute episode. Now I'm trying to block them out to make them longer, so I'll wait a few days in between the uploads. But this most recent one, something that I thought was people would love, is a review, right, from this website called Goodreads. And I usually go there when I'm trying to figure out the next book that I want to read, because you can get a really good review from this site, Goodreads. So I found one for A Song of Ice and Fire, and it's written by this user named J.G. Keeley, and they dismantled the shit out of George. It's very entertaining. I've never heard anybody say the stuff that the person said in this review, but also I dismantled and disseminated the shit out of J.G. Keeley as well, right? Because some of the points they made it clear to me that they were very biased in certain aspects. Although it is hilarious, some of the points they made. But that's the kind of content that is up on Patreon. Just like stuff that, I don't upload here to YouTube. Sometimes I do upload the stuff from Patreon here to YouTube. So there's that. But, yeah. It was really interesting. One of the points J.G. Keeley made in their thing was that George and many other authors, right? So this person made it seem as though they're extremely well read because they were quoting authors that I've not only never heard of but never even knew wrote books, right? So anyway, they made the point that most authors' pens get away from them, and when they're writing characters, it's supposed to be about this character, right? So let's say you're writing for Jon Snow. You need to write who you think Jon Snow is, not who you are as Jon Snow, right? If that makes sense. So what she accused George of doing, and most other authors that are men, I guess, she said they let their pen get away. So she set up this idea of when Daenerys is in the Dothraki market, and I believe it's in the Clash of Kings, she is very much become into her own, right? She's mastered the Dothraki. She's brought back dragons, right? And J.G. Keeley sets it up by saying, how can George write this scene? Let me get in the head of a 13-year-old girl from this long dynasty of dragon riders who's now had to rebuild herself, everything from scratch. And then after George does that, gets into her head, the first lines he writes are, her small breasts flowed freely in between the painted Dothraki vests. Like, that was hilarious. That's a really good point. I like that. That's a really good point. I never thought about it like that. That's not true. Not that I never thought about it like that, but I remember thinking, like, it's really interesting the way George words certain things because he's very good about getting in perspectives and being other people. For instance, Breanne, right? Brienne's entire arc in A Feast for Crows and just in the entire book in general is one of the best female characters, me as a male, I've ever read about, right? And, like, I've always liked women's heroes. I've been a big fan of Buffy my whole fucking life. So, for me, that was cool, right? So, like, that, George is able to do that. But then other places, his pen does sort of get away from him when he says her tiny breasts swayed freely in the Dothraki painted vest. It was hilarious. It was a really good point. But ultimately, the whole of the review gets disproven at the end that anything they said has any substance or anything meaningful to it because they literally said George, get this, George R. R. Martin is responsible for long epic fantasy no longer being accepted by publishers, and most authors have lost work because of how long it's taken George to write Winds of Winter. So I don't know if that's true. I'm not a publisher, but I just thought that it was so fucking crazy that someone could articulate and hit all these different points and, like, genuinely make sense to someone who's read A Song of Ice and Fire 7 times. I love it. It's my favorite series. But then end it by shitting all over everything they just said by saying, and also I have friends who work in the industry and they were not allowed to have their novel picked up by the publisher. Probably because your fucking friend in the industry can't write for shit. And the reason why their job or their book wasn't picked up and published was because it fucking sucks. It's not George's fault. That's nonsense. Mind you, the whole point that they made about publishers being hesitant to want to work with authors who are working on these long epic fantasy series, multiple books per, maybe. But I don't know, it's really, It's interesting. But yeah, you can join that for $2. That's my Patreon. It's linked down below in the description, or will be after this live stream. But if you can't, thank you for watching. The best thing you can do for anybody you're a fan of here on YouTube is to watch their videos. Like, for instance, I'm a big fan of, like, gardeners over in England, right? Like, this does not that this person needs it, but Erica's Little Welsh Garden is like my favorite gardening channel. I put 10 of her videos in a playlist, and I turn it on my computer and I just let it play. I'm not watching it, but she gets views as if I was watching it. That helps out YouTubers. So if you take my playlist or whatever that I've already made and you just hit play and just leave it in the background, leave it up on your computer or something, that helps generate traction towards your channel. So like I was just mentioning, if you can't join my Patreon, or if you can't send super chats or whatever, or check out I forgot to mention, this is a t-shirt that I sell. I designed it myself. If you can't do any of that, the best thing you can do is just watch here on YouTube. And one of the ways to watch is by, like I said, making a playlist. Like, I watch, obviously, all of Erica's videos, but it helps her out. She's a smaller channel like myself, so it helps her out a lot. I'm sure by, a bunch of people did that. Put the videos in a playlist and just let it play in the background. Even if you've already seen it, YouTube looks at that as, okay, this person's got active people searching them out and wanting to play for their stuff. And it kind of seems like you're cheating the algorithm, but it's not, because the algorithm does shit like what they've done to my channel, which is never, even though a video will have 36,000 views, still doesn't show up in their fucking feed. So you kind of have to beat the game. It's not cheating. It's beating the game that YouTube forces you to play, right? But anyway, thank you for watching. Along that, thank you to everybody who joined me. Thank you to the super chats, Julia Rentas. Where did the window go? Iced Up Jewelry, and John Haymaker for joining. Huntsman for 7 months. I'm about to answer that question right now. In short, no, I haven't seen it. And then also Cody Landry. Thank you. Thank you for the super chats. So did I see Pedro Pascal? Thank you for continuing to be a member, John Haymaker. Did I see Pedro Pascal on Saturday Night Live? No. What was it? SNL rarely makes me laugh. Dave Chappelle made me laugh. When Dave Chappelle did the Valarians, the extended family Valarians, that was pretty funny because he brought everybody back from the Player Haters Ball. So that was really cool to see. What happened with Pedro Pascal on SNL? Did he talk about how George Bush hates black people? Now Kanye West hates black people? Is that what happened? What specific scene? John, if you're still watching, what scene are you talking about? Also, like I said, thank you for joining. Being a channel member for as long as you have, man. I really appreciate that. I'll give you I don't see. Is it not refreshing? Well, either way, no, I didn't catch it, but I'll try to watch it later. Thank you, everybody, for joining me. Everybody who's watching this afterwards, thank you for watching. Like I said, please consider joining my Patreon. You can join there for as little as $2, and it really helps me out. Makes me no longer have to rely on YouTube's ad revenue, and also makes me do what I've been doing, which is taking more risks. I'm making content that I want to make. It doesn't matter the amount of views I get. Part of that is in thanks to Patreon. Like, every single member of my Patreon makes it possible. Like, for instance, 30-minute Dune video, worked on it for a couple hours, gets 100 views. Patreon makes it so that doesn't necessarily matter so much. I worked on it for several hours. I'm still ultimately getting paid from Patreon. I can take risk and put out content. And it's not taking a risk. It's like do this hard work for what? For nothing, right? Like, that's with anybody. Doesn't matter what you do, whether you enjoy it or not. It's like, if your efforts are in vain, you'd obviously feel some type of way. You know what I mean? That's how I am with YouTube videos and stuff. But because of Patreon, it's allowed me to take risks. So I've been doing a Lord of the Rings podcast. I've made Lord of the Rings videos before, but, doing that and doing videos. And then eventually I've got, when I get into another series of books, I'll probably start making content on that as well. So thank you for watching. Thank you for joining me. And I hope you have a good rest of your week and a good rest of your day. Along that, let me see. Because I saw this person submitted a question. intentionally late on purpose. I'm not sure why. Danny Dino says, where did the Black Dread take Princess Arya? It'd be cool if Georgia Martin sheds light on what that was. Whether so, it's pretty clear to me they went to Valyria. Like, even though Arya may have ridden off on Balerion, it's very clear that there's no way she could control and tame him and direct him where to go. He probably just went to where he wanted to, which was where he would maybe potentially fly often when they were still on Dragonstone before, Balerion's potentially the last creature that's seen Valyria in its heyday. So Balerion potentially could have been flying back and forth between Dragonstone and Valyria for centuries or for a while. And ultimately, when Balerion is mounted by a little girl who doesn't have much willpower, he's like, okay, I'm going to teach you a lesson. Let's go to Valyria. She goes to Valyria. Fireworms happen. She comes back a year later, dies, really tragic way. They put her in a bath of ice. All these fireworms burst from her body, and she ultimately dies of like having her brain melted or her eyes pop out and ooze, and it's nasty. But yeah, thank you for submitting that, Danny Dino. Not sure why you waited so late, but I just, from now on, if my patrons don't submit questions like up into at least the hour before I go live, I'm not going to answer it. It's just because it, I already talked about it. I need to talk about it again. But thank you for your support, Danny Dino. And also, if it wasn't intentional and it was just an accident, like you didn't see it in time, I'm sorry. I'll try to give my patrons more days to submit questions. So I'll probably, usually since the live streams are on Tuesday, I probably will post for Sunday to have questions submitted, but instead I'll do it on like Friday or something. But if that still makes people submit questions while I'm live streaming, well then they just won't be answered. Thank you for listening. Along that, Zeldris was